Greatek. The Great is short for Greater, incidentally. Little Eccleston consisting almost entirely of Carford Bridge and bugger all else. Actually, that's not strictly true. There are some very interesting old buildings in Little Eccleston, and a watermill, and a malt kiln that was owned by the Gillows family, I think. In fact, there's probably more to Little Eccleston than there is to Great Eccleston. Where was I? Oh yes, Great Eccleston is very much a traditional farming community, the sort that's all mud and wellies and rusting machinery, as opposed to designer chickens in feathery breeches. The Eccleston part of the name is Norse or Saxon or Old English or something. It refers to an ecclesiastical town, which is odd, given that at best Great Eccleston could only be described as a village, and it hasn't got a church. There's a Methodist church here, but that doesn't count. It's not a proper church, it's sanctioned by God. And there's St Anne's Church up at Cop, but that was built in 1723, so that doesn't count either. There are some plant holders at the Jacobean-aged Wall Farm that look as though they might once have been the basis of keel crosses, but who knows? The fact that Great Eccleston was recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086 as Eccleston has led some historians to speculate that it was named after the legendary Icelandic mercenary Egil, who was the hero of the Battle of Brommenberg in 937. That's the sort of thing that historians like to speculate about a lot, generally leading to pub brawls. Whatever the case, they hold a market in Great Eccleston on Wednesdays, the locals, that is, not historians, as well as the Great Eck Show every July, or at least every July when COVID restrictions aren't in place, where, for 13 quid, the sheep aren't the only ones they fleece around these parts, you can experience life in the slow lane. The market isn't exactly much of a market, although back in the day, which day we couldn't determine, it was prominent enough for Great Eccleston to be referred to as Little London, probably by some extremely sarcastic local. There's tractor pulling at the Great Eck Show and shire horses in full regalia, displays of livestock, country crafts, interestingly shaped vegetables and shiny steam engines. The kids can have their photograph taken with a prize-winning cow if they're into that sort of thing, and somewhere down the line they'll probably end up eating it. However, at the time of recording, it isn't July and it isn't Wednesday, so we haven't got any footage of either the Great Eck Show or the village market. Let's have some great Ecclestonian facts instead. During the 19th century, before the proliferation of indoor lamps, the village did a roaring trade in the manufacture of rushlights. It also had a tithe barn once, as well as a pinfold and even a windmill, the latter of which met its demise at the hands of Squire Wilson of Rawcliffe, also known as Mad Jack. One Guy Fawkes night, apparently, said Squire took it into his inebriated head to conduct a grand pyrotechnics display. Armed with a barrel of paraffin, he drove his horse and cart over Carford Bridge, followed by a rowdy procession of aristocratic drunkards, and made for the windmill. What followed could be seen as far away as Fleetwood. The windmill burned for 3 whole days. Of course, if some alcohol-fueled youth from a council estate had committed the same act, it probably wouldn't have been regarded as an amusing anecdote by local authors. Being a member of the landed gentry, it seems, serves as an excellent mental muffler for most folk. There's a cafe in Great Eccleston that has to be one of the smallest we've ever visited. At a push, it could accommodate half a dozen customers, providing they're not overweight and they're arranged in single file along the dining room wall. By contrast, Great Eccleston has 3 public houses. The first is called the Black Bull, the second, almost immediately across the road from the first, is the White Bull, and the third is the Farmer's Arms. They like to keep things simple in Great Eccleston. Presumably it's a matter of personal politics as to which the drunks choose. And there's the obligatory ghost story to be had on this occasion, courtesy of the Victoria County History, which informs us At Cross House, formerly owned by the White family, it is said that strange and unaccountable noises have been heard, and on several occasions a lady, dressed in white, has appeared at a small window in the attics, looking out onto the gardens below. I didn't say it was an exciting ghost story. Speaking of Carford Bridge, which we were a couple of minutes ago, albeit briefly, it's a diminutive, old-fashioned stone affair which, when it's not hidden beneath scaffolding, looks as though it belongs in a Tolkien novel. It's also a toll bridge. You don't get many of them around these days. It costs 60 pence to cross on a car, payable to the toll collector in his cottage. Given the paucity of traffic around these parts, it can't be much of a money spinner. Local legend has it that the bridge was built in the 1830s after 2 girls and their boat were swept away when the River Wyre flooded. Both survived, but because one of the girls was a servant at Rawcliffe Hall, the squire there had the bridge built. Back in 1908, about 80 years after it was first constructed, as the temporal crow flies, the charge for cars crossing the 450-foot span was just 1 shilling. The bridge itself being described as very awkward for motor cars, as there are iron channels for the cartwheels and they're the wrong width. Other than the bridge, which isn't saying much, there's nothing significant at Carford, apart from the Carford Arms, formerly the Carford Inn, a Georgian coaching inn run in the 1960s by a landlady known locally as Dirty Annie. Why, we don't know ourselves, but it's fun to speculate. Naturally, it's got a ghost which switches lights on and off and moves things around pointlessly. Much like the ghost at Cross House, it's not very exciting. But then again, the Carford Arms is quite a popular pub, so from a publicity perspective, it doesn't have to be. There's not much else to add, apart from the fact that back in 1331, 1/3 of the manor was owned by the intriguingly named Thomas de Evil, Austin Powers' Watch Out, on which we couldn't be bothered coming up with anything better joke. Subscribe, click like, whatever, and we'll be back again as soon as we possibly can with the next exciting episode.